What's up, everybody? I am back with a new Disparu reaction video, and this one is titled The Odyssey Fallout, the bizarre last stand for woke movies. Now, we're asking people who did not care for this movie, or at least the certain choices made for this movie, all understood. And I've said it before too. There's no way this movie still doesn't make money. It's still Christopher Nolan. His name holds weight. He has very loyal fan base. This was going to make money. And it's probably above average in terms of being a movie. But then you start including certain choices and changes made when you try to throw in the lore of the Odyssey into it. It lowers the enjoyment quite a bit. Especially when they took out the whole nobody dialogue that is very important in the narrative of the whole Cyclops scene, which, no matter what side of the discussion you're on, people all agree that's the best scene. I think also a lot of people agree Robert Pattinson is the best part of the film. And so is Anne Hathaway. But by and large, this film is like I said, it's above average in terms of just being by just a movie standard. But the critic score, the Rotten Tomato score, seems way over embellished, at least by a smidge. You cannot tell me this movie isn't being like the scales aren't being tipped purposely in this favor, because realistically this is above average. It's like slightly better than Tenet in terms of a Christopher Nolan movie. But honestly, because I think this is kind of a pushback, or at least retribution, for what transpired with Supergirl, and because the woke people really want that to justify gender swaps, race swaps, all this nonsensical bull crap in these films. These agenda-driven, corporate-mandated PC bullcrap in these films. They need somebody like Christopher Nolan to justify it. And that's what it is. It's trying to justify this crap. And they want retribution because it was proven right about the choices being made with Supergirl. And this is kind of like payback in some kind of way. Not to say it might have been on purpose, but it's definitely like a a got your back moment. And I also think it's still pretty raw right now, but give it a few months, maybe by next year, people eventually will look back and people who overglazing it right now gonna feel more comfortable admitting that no, this is like just an okay film, because they got to make sure this film is like, is the Godfather level of quality film. They got to justify it. The shills got to justify it. The woke people got to justify it. So they will not say their true opinions. Once the heat dies down, once it's not getting them, because there's been movies like that where, it's been overglazed, but once a couple of years down the line, when other movies are in the news cycle, people can be more honest about, it wasn't as good. Looking back on that, it doesn't really stand up for certain things and blah, 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 because now they won't get as much pushback, because look at somebody like Grace Randolph, who was completely honest about her opinion with Supergirl. She's getting attacked by people who stood with her with everything else, but as soon as she thought for herself, she got so much hate, calling all kinds of names. You know, oh, she was a secret right winger or something like that. It's just like nobody on that side can get an honest opinion, think for themselves, because it's too hot right now. But I guarantee you, give it a couple of years, there'll be a lot more people once this movie get brought up again. Then looking back and it's like, yeah, it wasn't as good as I thought it was. Instead of just owning up to it now, there's a lot of people that would be so scared to say their opinion because they don't want to get any kind of like, heat, and they want their little access to certain rooms and directors to interview with for their little channels. I legit believe that. That's what I'm saying. That I'm not saying it's terrible. Apparently, it's not terrible. But the overglazing, the 96th percentile of Rotten Tomatoes, like, that's a little much. That's a little far. That's just my opinion. But I won't get to Disparu's video. But like the video, share the video. I'll leave a link in the description below for the original video so you can check out yourself. Follow and subscribe to my YouTube and Twitch channel, Talking of Carl. I just had to get my little opinion out the way before we check out what Disparu thoughts are. So here we go.
The Odyssey has become strangely civilizationally important to some people, with all manner of weird and wild arguments being made that seem to be trying to convince themselves more than other people. But congratulations, we finally made a woke movie that made money. And that's important for some reason. Like, at the same time, Christopher Nolan came out and said he couldn't adapt the poem properly because it was misogynistic. I mean, he didn't want to take it off the table what it was saying deconstructing men, he just didn't want to adapt the end of the poem because that had something to say about women. You combine that with The Odyssey's epic box office haul breaks the go woke, go broke myth. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey defeats the trolls, because now if you have taste in media or don't like Christopher Nolan being another woke Hollywood lunatic, somehow that makes you a troll. Funny definition of troll, by the way. Someone who leaves intentionally annoying or offensive message on the internet in order to upset someone or to get attention or cause trouble. In other words, they're using it to just mean, why won't you go along with the hive mind? Everyone else has agreed we should destroy society. Why don't you? That is the level of argumentation based around the Odyssey at this moment. It's because it's seen by the lowest common denominator, and so that's the person making the argument.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 40.
Literally boils down to, well, all these people like it, and you wouldn't want to not be a member of the herd, would you? You wouldn't want to have your own independent opinion. You wouldn't dare to disagree with the masses. Well, like, it really says more about the commentators making this kind of...
And say what you will about the quote-unquote chuds, but at least they can have their own opinion, and no one will be attacking them for it. Even if they legit like a certain movie that most of us think is kind of or meh, it's okay. None of it, like, on those quote-unquote chud side is not going to cancel or lambaste somebody who happened to enjoy a bad movie. We'll never attack Grace Randolph or our version of Grace Randolph, like, what's the female equivalent to Grace Randolph? Like, I guess, like, Vera Dark. Let's use her for example. Nobody who generally agrees with Vera Dark on certain takes wouldn't attack her because she has a difference of opinion when it comes to a movie that most others of her ilk either like or dislike. But we have plenty of examples on the far left, or just for lack of a better word, far left. We see too many examples of people attacking whenever they have their own opinion about something that goes against the vast majority in their little silos. The chuds never had to invent a whole blue sky in order to stay in their little PC bubble. There's more freedom on the other side of things than it is with the blue sky bubble.
Argument than anyone else. The anti-woke mob picked the wrong fight with the Odyssey. Don't you understand? You're not part of the sheeple. I'm a social consensus machine. I can't comprehend why anyone would disagree with the masses. How do you have the balls? Oh, sorry, really answered my own question there. The Odyssey's critical and box office success has completely broken online chuds who've...
And the fact that they have to they pull a insignificant character for Elliot Page to play for a few lousy minutes that alone, at least aside from the whole Lupita Nyong'o situation, that alone, nobody on the left want to, or at least the woke side or whatever, don't want to address the fact that, okay, you pretty much wasted a few minutes of screen time for a character that doesn't add nothing to the story. You cannot tell me that isn't some level of a checkbox or some kind of PC points. Because honestly, you take that character out, doesn't really serve a purpose. Like if you take it out, it doesn't ruin the entire film. It's a nothing burger of a character. Like, that was forced. But, and a lot of people are like, are betting that when it comes to Oscar time, how much you want to bet? Despite the few lousy, crummy minutes this character have, I bet you this character will have like a Best Supporting Actor nomination and win. Elliot Page will win some kind of award for Oscars or whatever for Best Supporting Role in The Odyssey. You know that's going to happen, and it's gonna be so manufactured. I kid you not, and you cannot tell me it isn't. Now, it'll be different if the character maybe had at least 10 minutes, but it was a few lousy minutes. Just to watch Elliot Page stumble in these like bulky armor like a child, wearing their father's, adult clothes. It's like what are we doing here?
Got Twitter isn't real life. For a start, Twitter is real life. Like, it genuinely is. Twitter has real people on it posting real things. They don't go online and state different things that aren't their opinion. They believe the same things on Twitter as in real life. You could argue it's a biased sample of real life, and therefore isn't representative of all the worldviews, but you'll also find nothing is. It's basically going, well, water isn't a drink. No, it is. You just can't say it's all drinks. Go woke, go broke. The Odyssey sails to massive opening weekend despite the racist phobic backlash.
And just because this managed to be successful despite woke choices being made and changes being made, this will be the exception to the rule. A perfect example of being the exception to the rule. Because we got too many other examples greatly outweighing this one positive example to show that this isn't a viable option. But most of Hollywood will learn the wrong lessons, and people like Disparu is going to be, suspecting that Hollywood is going to use this as an excuse to reinforce these little decisions in future movies. And guess what? There's not that many Christopher Nolans out there that can make this successful, make these kind of choices successful. Not that many, or definitely don't have that cachet that he has. And even those with that cachet, like, you would think James Gunn would have that kind of cachet, but Supergirl didn't turn out that well. You'd be hard pressed to get Scorsese or even Spielberg to do any of half the nonsense that you see with the Odyssey. And even there's certain things that even Spielberg wasn't successful at. Like just recently with that Disclosure Day, you think Spielberg wouldn't have like misses in his repertoire, but he actually has a few misses. So it's one of those rare occurrences that like a broken clock is right twice a day kind of scenario. That's what we have here. It's one of those moments where a broken clock actually be right. But they will lean hard into it. It's kind of like when you see like you hear like a woman cope that uh oh Sierra found Russell Wilson despite all of her past, and she got accepted and everything like that. So they were like wallow in their delusion, thing like, oh, if it happened to her, it can happen to me too. But it's just like, yeah, well, that was Sierra's situation. She got lucky. You're not Sierra. You ain't gonna get like a Russell Wilson that'll just accept all your disgusting bull crap that you wallowed in for X amount of years. So not every director is gonna pull off what Christopher Nolan managed to pull off, and you can just say, well, it happened once, it can happen every time now. It's like, stop it. Stop using this. They're going to start using this as a prime example. Some writers, certain studio heads are going to use this as a who's, woke in the head, who is very extreme liberal, will use this as a launching point to greenlight any stupid thing. We're going to have tons of Acolyte, tons of Starfleet Academy, just shoving nonsense down our throats, preachy bullcrap, girl bossing out the yin yang, destroying IPs and any masculine characters that we grow up with, looked upon as heroes. They're gonna be torn to shreds in for the sake of propping up a female. That is the lesson they're going to be learning. And we're going to set everybody back. And this is why so many directors are not filming or in California, or even a lot of studios is leaving California to other parts of the U.S. or even international to film stuff because it's not working there.
That's right, the lesson which is being learned from the Odyssey is that you can employ completely incompetent people that are utterly awful in their roles and still make money. They think that's a win. That, look, the audience guzzled down the trash we gave them this time. I'm sure they'll do that again. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Yeah, this used to work for Marvel too. But this is why in any kind of statistical analysis, you don't look at one example, you look at an ongoing trend over a period of time. And we kind of worked out what that trend is over the last 10 years. The Odyssey backlash failed tremendously. All the people that for years have been going, well, you can't actually commentate on something unless you've seen it. You can't judge something off the trailers, you can't judge it off the marketing. You've got to go and see the movie before you can judge it. So then people went to see the movie so they can judge it, and they went to see the movie. That means it's good. I mean, you'll have to forgive me if I look at all the people that confidently tout about how nuanced they are. I don't really put much stock in their analysis, which is the equivalent of a 3-year-old's dissertation. Now, obviously, I don't care about the masses' opinion of a movie, because I'm not the masses. I'm the guy that says Willow and She-Hulk are amazing entertainment.
There's a hot chick over there, I'm gonna go talk to it.
Sprinkle it on my bum and make my dental windows smell like cinnamon.
I'm the guy that absolutely adored reviewing Robin Hood.
We pretty much take it all. Fridges and dishwashers, couches, mattresses, same-day notice, or 3...
He's the best thing in the show. He's the best thing in the show. I looked at MILF Manor and thought, all you people should be in prison.
I handed on a grandma and she liked it.
I mean, when was that? Yesterday?
I got pink eye from ass.
How did I end up in this situation? I was in a restaurant and got with a stranger in the bathroom.
That's giving Kelly vibes.
You just read that like, yeah, that's Kelly, she's a whore. Although I did find it funny. All I'm saying is no one comes to me because they want the mainstream opinion on media. But at the same time that everyone is celebrating just how woke the Odyssey is. And even Christopher Nolan's coming out and confirming it. We have Emily Wilson, the person who wrote the modern woke translation that this movie is based on. And, well, it's too woke for her. Even she doesn't like the movie. All I'm saying is if you can take the person that dedicated years of their life to subverting the poem, to create a new modern version to impose her morality on the work, then I'm not exactly sure this is a long-term strategy for satisfying audiences into the future. Because Emily Wilson said,
presents us with an Odysseus who feels very bad about certain things that he's done in war and is struggling to process them in a very, I would say, very modern, psychiatrized way.
This is absolutely true. The Odyssey turns Odysseus into just a depressed loser, deconstructs all masculinity, basically makes him very feminine himself, and so he has to go to therapy and just gets addicted to SSRIs. Even at the end of the movie when he sails off into the sunset, I get the impression that he's going...
And that's why I didn't want to waste my time with the Odyssey. They completely bastardize it. Even if it was even too woke for it, the actual writer, which Nolan's wife wanted adapted for the film, was too much even for her. It goes to show this is like too far. It gone too far. it's like, and I cannot stand that you gotta over therapize, you know, everything imaginable, every character imaginable. It's just like therapy has been like, it could be like, in most cases, the best thing that can happen to people, but it's also the worst thing to happen to people, because some people cannot leave it in the therapist's office. They gotta bring that crap into every market possible where it often don't belong, like movies. Not every character gotta be suffering through some trauma, especially when you're dealing with ancient warriors in a particular time period. Like Odysseus didn't need no therapy session or need to show how his masculinity was toxic or whatever. I was like, he was a warrior. People had different ways of thinking back in the day, different rules in society they was governed by, but they understood that we, by today's standards, would look at as probably barbaric, but it was the cultural norm at that time. Like being a soldier in the army, where I'm pretty sure they probably, after a certain point, got weary of it, but they understood duty. They understood that, like, Agamemnon called me on to fight for his army. I am what's the word? You know, not bequeath, but it's like, I'm duty bound to fight for him, no matter how I feel about the reason for this fight. I am duty bound to fight in his army. I am a soldier. I have a duty, and we gotta take down these enemy forces. That is the job. Look at any ancient warrior race. They had an understandable duty despite what they might feel. They understood what is required of them. They, like I said, they might not have liked it. They might have certain opinions about it, but they put all that to the side because they knew at the end of the day they had like a job to do. They had orders to follow. But, you know, feminized society don't understand about hierarchy, duty. They understand about feelings. You know, let's have like let's talk things out. Let's have a sewing circle to discuss how we feel about the situation. That's how females deal with problems. Guys don't deal with situations like that. That's not how we operate. But that's how a feminized society has been pushed upon us. So now in our movies, we're seeing the that's why young men don't have like male heroes to truly look up to, because they're so girlified. When I grew up looking at Leonidas and from 300 and Maximus, I look at it like, man, these are freaking warriors. These guys got honor code. They understand, like, you know, they're doing this for not only their country but their families, and they're often their wives. And we're going to take down this threat that will enslave our people or kill our people without a second thought. So I'm going to fight for them. I don't want to sit there and have like a moral of like, oh my God, I just took a life. Oh my God, it's like I need to talk about my feelings. Let me know how bad my maleness is. It's like, don't even watch that crap. Matter of fact, I'm gonna continue on. No, I want to show you. This is what like most guys grew up with and what we want, especially in terms of like ancient history. You know, watching movies in periods and like fighting for what's right and stuff.
I'm Olivia Rodrigo, and
this is what we had here.
You do have a name.
My name is Gladiator.
How dare you show your back to me? Slave! Will you remove your helmet and tell me your name?
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legions, loyal servant to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
Good example right there. This is what young men aren't growing up with right now. Here's another example. Hold on. How you spell his freaking name?
No, that's a bit of a problem. See, rumor has it, the Athenians have already turned you down. And if those philosophers and boy lovers have found that kind of nerve, then...
We must be diplomatic.
And of course, Spartans have their reputation to consider.
Choose your next words carefully, Leonidas. They may be your last as king.
Looking out, thinking about his country, his people, the children, and his wife. Things that, like, something like the Odyssey probably won't do nowadays because, like, oh my God, like, that's toxic. This is not a feminized 300. This is like what men like resonate with because we understand what it means to fight for something beyond ourselves. Even if it means to sacrifice our own lives. Leonidas, Maximus, and classic Odysseus understand this. Because they are warriors.
Madman. You're a madman.
Earth and water. But you'll find plenty of both down there.
No man, Persian or Greek, no man threatens a messenger.
You bring the crowns and heads of conquered kings to my city steps. You insult my queen. You threaten my people with slavery and death. Oh, I've chosen my words carefully, Persian. Perhaps you should have done the same.
This is blasphemy. This is madness.
And you cannot tell me, oh, women didn't have agency. This is a king looking upon his queen, who's a proper helpmate, who is who understands what her husband needs to do as king, the leader, she's wise counsel. And without even saying a word, he just looks at her. And she knows what this means, but she's backing up her man.
Madness. This is Sparta!
That was the Penelope of that time. That's what OG Penelope would have, like, acted like. That's how she was written like. Not this new Nolan version who was like giving up, like chastising her son, thinking like, oh, she is owed the seat, then just to turn around and like piss off to parts unknown with her husband and give this throne to a kid who's not prepared and wasn't properly trained to learn, taught how to lead and govern properly. It's just like that. That's not the story, and that's definitely not how it is. Is operated in terms of any type of warrior history or any kind of like governed history. No way in hell that no alive leader would just give up the throne, give it to an unprepared kid without being taught to some degree how to govern a land and fight for it if need be. But then again, these directors didn't let their wives, get in their head and pick some feminized retelling of these kind of stories and run rampant with odd choices. Sorry, kind of went off on a little tangent there, but I just want to show off like an example of what the Odyssey should have been, in the same ilk with. But no. Because despite it still doing well, it could have been a whole lot better if we stuck with what the original writer had depicted, how he wanted it. And it wasn't no crazy race swaps either. Even if, like, the people in 300 wasn't all Greek, even if like the people in Gladiator wasn't all Roman, you bought into it because you put a white person in like a particular area, whether it's Celtic or middle-aged England. Your brain can easily buy it, but you can't put a Indian person in the armor of a Spartan and call him a Spartan. Unlike Christopher Nolan putting an Asian and Indian person and calling him Greek. Your brain cannot buy it. It ruins the illusion. It ruins the magic of film.
Going to audition for The View.
And he seems to feel bad about being a warrior, and we never actually get to see him doing much warrioring, which I thought in a way was a bit of a shame.
This is the feminist complaining that the man isn't enough of a butch warrior and is too weak and pathetic for her to actually enjoy him in the movie.
There's a tolerance for ambiguity in the world of the Odyssey, which I don't think there exactly is in the world of Hollywood blockbuster action film, right? Yeah. Is that he has to make the protagonist a likable all-American hero.
This is a position that I disagree on, because Odysseus isn't turned into a likable all-American hero in this.
This is so ironic, coming from her, given the fact that what she wrote. This is so ironic.
In fact, it's the opposite. He takes all the sort of American hero values and strips him of them. Traditional masculine heroism is removed from this movie intentionally. Nolan even cuts out the...
And by the way, check out my review of like Gladiator and 300 and the 300 sequel up on my channel as I give my overall thoughts on those films.
Ending because it would have turned him into that hero. The message at the end of the Odyssey of killing the suitors and the handmaids is that when people come and they walk over you, they take advantage of you, they exploit your weakness for their own personal gain, you don't just dish out justice on those people as they deserve, but you also hold the women who sided with them and aided them accountable as well. It was actually, funnily enough, saying that they should be equally treated, that they're not above the law, and that while the genders may act differently, that doesn't mean that they don't both do things wrong and should be punished for it. And then a lot...
I keep telling people that ask me, did I see the Odyssey? It's like, I personally don't want to see the Odyssey. Because it's kind of a very bastardized version of what I grew up with in terms of the story by Homer and the 90s version that I've watched as a kid, the Hermano Sante, which is a lot more faithful to the story than what we're getting right now. That's my personal opinion. That's why I always recommend to people, you can watch Nolan's version of the Odyssey. That's your dollars, you know, your decision. I'm not going to hold it against you. But I do encourage you to check out the 90s Hermano Sante movie that's free on YouTube. You can check it out, the entire film. It's chopped up in 2-parters. But that is so faithful to the story. And people point out, oh, well, they got a black woman as Calypso. Why you ain't, like, you know, complaining about there's clearly a race swap. She's not Greek. Yes, granted. But she's also, you know, not one of the main characters. B, one of the most beautiful women of that, you know, time. Still, to this day, still a very beautiful woman. And also, Hollywood wasn't inundated with these crazy little standards and mandates that have to check off these little boxes. You are more than willing to trust the studios back then when they do certain race drops, for example. You trust that they did hire them based on their merit. That's the key there. But since society pretty much figured out that Hollywood had these little weird standards that you gotta have a certain amount of women, certain amount of people of color, certain amount of this and that in order to get certain things greenlit, to get certain awards, nominations, stuff like that. Well, you kind of become like manufactured slop, where now we can't trust the fact that, oh, hey, did this woman get in there based on their skill set as an actress, or was there a quota that needed to be met? Gee, I don't know. You ruined the trust now, because they could have been there based on their skill, but we don't know. It would help if Hollywood tossed away the stupid quotas, the stupid DI bullcrap. Then we can start re-earning the trust of the audience, between the audience and the studios.
Comes Christopher Nolan, who's like, no, we can't punish half the population, that'd be wrong. This is part of what strips him of heroism, as a hero is the superior being who stands above the rest of the world and is willing to make the hard choices and decisions that no one else will or can. It is the answer to, who do you think you are to make these decisions? It's like, I'm the best person here.
Is a real challenge if you're basing this on a poem where the hero is not necessarily motivated by romantic love or being a nice suburban parent.
But Odysseus is those things. He is motivated by love. His entire aim is to get back home to Penelope and his son, which would make him a good parent. And what you think a good parent is in the modern time is irrelevant to what was intended at the time in the poem. But being able to zoom out from his own perspective doesn't seem to be possible for Christopher Nolan.
He wants glory, and he wants to get spoils from the sack of a city.
For who? Why do men show off? Why are there so many videos on the internet of going, this is why women live longer, and it's just men doing ridiculously risky things?
Whether you're a professional auto technician or working in your home garage, Harbor Freight.
Men gather resources for their family. Like, she's looking at it from the female perspective of a social...
That's how a lot of Vikings, you know, got their resources. They pillaged and ransacked other areas in order to bring the resources back to feed their own families. You can call it, oh, that was toxic, that was like, that should be glorified. No, it wasn't glorified. Nobody liked that. But that was the norm of that time and of that race. like many races that ransacked, pillaged, conquered other areas for land and its resources and riches, done horrific acts that even by 1940 standards would be considered barbaric. Hell, by the old West standards will be considered barbaric. But you need to stop looking at the past through 2025, 2026, almost 2027 glasses and diminishing it or criticizing the people of that era, thinking like, oh, they're toxic, and they was feeling like trauma. They should have sought therapy. They should have done this and then the third. And it's like, who are you to fucking question what they had to do at that time, given the circumstances they were in and certain choices presented to them at that moment? There's people criticizing the main guy, Cillian Murphy, played in Oppenheimer, who created the atom bomb, and it's like, oh, he could have made different choices. How can you made him like look like all super sympathetic and sad when he contributed to this horrific act? It's like yeah, it's crazy. You can criticize the man now. Of course, through hindsight, you can see horrific stuff done through the invention of this weapon, but consider the alternative presented at that time, given the circumstances at that time, was little to no options. Otherwise, because we was at World War, given the fact that it was dealing with 3 Axis powers, one of which was primed for world domination, yeah, not cool, horrific, we can all agree, but I'm not going to criticize the man, given the fact, or at least the people at that time who constructed this machine, that, yeah, considering what they was dealing with and the options presented with them, they had to make a deterrent just to put a stop to it, because it was probably going to be no end in fucking sight. So you can't criticize somebody like Odysseus, given the fact that he's a warrior that had to do what he needs to do in order to end this war so he can get home to his family. And through his own hubris, had to go through all these trials and tribulations just to learn some humility so he can get back home to stop these suitors from taking everything that he has earned through his blood, sweat, and tears with his wife, who, through her agency, made, because this is probably why they end up together, because they both so good at trickery and manipulation in order to get one up over these opposing forces. She messed up the little thread thing consistently just to stall these people out long enough for hopefully the son could be either strong enough to fight them back, or getting like hopefully their husband can make it back home to deal with the issue. God, they really screw up this fucking epic. Oh my god.
Status, which is just done for themselves. Whereas men gather power, money, status, simply because if you have the better nest, you attract the better birds. Wanting glory isn't some specifically Greek thing. It's a timeless message which is built into men genetically, because it aided the survival of the species. It's how men compete. Greeks just did it by sacking a city, but just because we've changed how we get glory in modern times, doesn't mean you remove the timeless message from the entertainment. Just because you can't understand it says you've got a chip on your shoulder, you're insecure. Or because that's what you want the men in society to be, so that you can weaken them. Some kind of weird intersectional competition.
You'll see what Nolan does with all of that, but it's different things from what Homer does.
Yeah,
I'm starting to believe that a lot of these feminists are just deep down jealous of men. I legit believe that it's about jealousy of things that men can do that they cannot do. Not at least without any kind of backlash from society. They hate how nature, science, God sort out life that might favor men in some ways and favor women in other ways. But some of these feminists want to have it all the perks of the men and none of the responsibilities. They hate that men are stronger than women in most cases. They hate have because we can use that strength to determine how things go. They hate how men knee-jerk biology operate on logic, so they can reason, strategize, pull off certain things that women more often than not cannot do. They hate how they pretty much are the fairest sex and have to be protected most of the time and taken care of most of the time by the stronger species, which is the men. They hate they can't fool around as many people without being labeled as a slore, as opposed to men who often, not everyone, but most cases, the bigger, stronger, capable, smarter, wealthier men often partake in the pleasures of the fair sex, and way more often with little to no backlash for it. That is just the nature of it. You don't have to like it, but you have to accept it. And deep down, you find those kind of men attractive because that is social proof that these guys are capable of wooing women. They're jealous of certain things that men are able to do, just off rip, just by their biology, and what is accepted by society. They hate it. They want to change it so much. They want to restructure it in any way possible, often via movies and TV shows and books and comic books, through commercials often, to try to change the narrative like that, to really lower a man's value in any kind of way, to destroy masculine in any way possible, to take men down a peg. That's what it boils down to, is a power play, because deep down they are jealous of things that men are just more often than not inherently able to do, that they cannot pull off to the same degree, if at all. That's what it is. That's why they gave these certain spaces when the male gaze, when it comes to how females look in video games, movies, and TV shows. They make them look all frumpy, despite them being, the actresses being beautiful as you see them on red carpets. Zendaya, for example, in the Odyssey, looks very toned down. Even in Dune, she looks so toned down, even though she's a freaking model. And when you see her on these red carpets, she is a beautiful woman. But that is not transferred into the movie she is in. That is just a destruction of lowering the looks of very beautiful women, traditionally beautiful women, so that men cannot enjoy the appeal of obviously beautiful women. That's why they probably hate Sydney Sweeney so much, because she kind of rebukes any of that stuff. She likes looking good, especially anything she's in. She acknowledges her moneymaker is her assets, that men who are the primary viewers of movies and contributors of movies and TV shows, because they're the primary buyers, because they're the primary ones that buy these things for women or for themselves, or they're just the primary contributors. And so movies where beautiful women are a part of, games that beautiful women are a part of, they are the primary buyers because they want to look at the hot women. That's why you see them, these feminists pissing all over Marvel Rivals, or getting so butthurt about characters from Resident Evil, because they do so well, not only because the games are good, but the fact that it helps that they're easy on the eyes. It draws people in, typically men who are the primary consumers. They hate when anything caters to men, that acknowledges men. Any kind of way. They want to destroy it. It is bitterness, it is jealousy. Let's call it what it is. It's very odd.
Odysseus into a bit. It's almost like Christopher Nolan sat there in his office and specifically based Odysseus off Mark Ruffalo.
Right. I kept looking in vain for a sense that this was a film about glory. I think it's a film that has some interest in shame, but I don't think it has any interest in glory.
Absolutely right. The movie is based around shaming men for acting like men. It is your standard modern message that just can't comprehend masculinity. And so because Hollywood is so effeminate, it's the only thing they can understand, and anything which isn't that is deemed to be wrong. And so the only way it can become good, can become worthy, because they...
And it's kind of odd. They also, in the same breath, asking, like, where are the masculine men at? You pretty much try to eradicate them in any kind of freaking way possible, where they're watching these movies and watching these effeminate men in most products, not in everything, but most products, they got no examples of what true masculinity look like, so they turn to like beta cucks through feminists' own making. And then they get mad when they are wise mentors, men, not the quote unquote toxic ones, but I'm talking about like the just normal regular men who acknowledges this bullcrap is gone too feminized, and they are trying to inform these young men how to present themselves, need to work on themselves when it comes to physicality, finance, having goals for themselves, being ambitious, working on their physical strength, all that stuff to elevate them in terms of their confidence and net worth and respectability in society. You're trying to elevate men, give them something to look upon. But because feminists either don't like the messenger or the message, they will deem it as toxic. Because they cannot have any men that acknowledges their self-worth, whether it's via actual men in these certain media spaces, or in movies or TV shows that shows men in positive light for men to look up to, because it's a power struggle. They can't have that. They need to have women be top of the heap, no matter how she got there. Girl boss her way up there. It's, oh my God. And they dare ask, where are the strong masculine men at? You trying to neutralize them, or at least if you're not, you know women who are. And they try to shut those wiser women down by calling them pick-me's. Use those buzzwords, because you cannot tell women anything nowadays. There's no man or woman who can tell certain women anything, because that's mean. It's bullying. Like, no. You can't have it both ways. You want masculine men? I'm talking about men. I ain't talking about the monsters, and I'm not talking about those beta cucks out there in Hollywood. I'm talking like just normal men who have self-respect, who is proper leaders, have motion and ambition, who will tell the man to shake it off, go to the gym, work on yourself, don't let women run you, finesse you, hold them accountable, have self-respect. But no, that'll be toxic, because everything the men do, right or wrong, normally is right, but they'll be deemed as toxic.
Can't understand it. It's too complex for them. They have to degrade it and drag it down and be like, well, you should just be like me. You should stop competing. You should lower yourself to my position, and then you'll be a good boy. Now, the main problem with this is shame only works if you're superior. It is exclusively something that you do punching down. Shame doesn't work unless you have some kind of high ground. I don't want to look at you like, why would I come you? I have to respect you before you can shame me. It's why you look at the character Odysseus in the movie, and he's kind of just a repulsive character, because there is nothing to him. There's no reason he should be leading these people. There's nothing here worthy of respect, because he is rudderless. He has no aims, no goals. He's not trying to achieve anything. He's not driven by anything. His entire message is, I don't want to go home. It's like, well, piss off then. Let's go and make a movie where we actually follow a man for once, shall we?
But it is very much in tune with things that Nolan has been obsessed with his whole career.
This is also something that Daniel Mendelsohn noticed. A speech about his regret of Troy, for some reason.
You, just you, building your... He's 44.
yeah, this is the greatest moment of my life, but I'm supposed to care about my enemies. As this resounding speech echoed in my ears, it occurred to me it was nothing like the heroes of Homer, but looked like the heroes of Christopher Nolan movies. Tormented, guilt-ridden Odysseus, stripped of humor, wit, seductiveness, and cleverness. You know, everything makes characters good. It's a sibling of Memento's anguished amnesiac of Batman.
This should have been a slam dunk for Nolan, but no. They should have given this to Robert Eggers, because the movies he makes are so authentic to the time period that he obviously respects history and lore and proper casting. Of course, like Elon Musk wanted to make an AI version of this movie, but or the Odyssey, and it's like no. And people suggested give it to somebody like Mel Gibson. I would suggest Robert Eggers, personally, but just give them the, whether it's Mel Gibson or Robert Eggers, just give this director money necessary to make a proper Odyssey that I would willing to watch. That I'll be more excited for, because I like faithful adaptations. And I'm like a casual fan of history that I want to be authentic as possible. You may not even get like the dialect or verbiage correctly, given how old that they are, but if you can get it at least close enough, that'll be good enough. Not everything's going to be super perfect. No movie is, but as long as you get it close enough, that I call that a success.
Of Oppenheimer, men agonized by their past as they wrestle with in different ways. Nolan acknowledged that the Odyssey he saw as your text. It's in everything I've done before. He's a one-note wonder. Now, the way he gets around this is from hopping from IP to IP. This might be a flaw in superhero genres as a whole, that you have Marvel and DC, and so you link all of those things together, which allows people to build up a trend. Whereas actually, if Hollywood had been skipping from thing to thing, if it kept creating new things, new ideas, then maybe it would have allowed them to hide these ideas a lot better. Maybe people wouldn't have had time to build up a trend, to notice the way things were going. That actually, if you do keep creating new movies, if you make something an event, if you dress it up in a little bit of a confusing way, to make people think that they're watching something smarter than it is, then maybe you can slip it by them for a lot longer. Although my point of view is still that because these messages aren't satisfying to humanity, that you need men to go to the cinema and the men want masculinity reaffirmed, that the new modern version of it is nothing but femininity. And so unless you do come out and just openly praise and celebrate, reinforce the ideas of hierarchy, competitiveness, justice, and giving people what they deserve, then actually people getting bored of your stories is inevitable, no matter how many tricks you may be able to drag out to extend the life force of the cinema for a few more years. But it was interesting that Emily Wilson didn't seem to like the film. If it's based on your translation, if it takes a lot of inspiration from you, then you should like it. But Emily Wilson still liked the poem. She wanted to keep the poem and the events similar. What she did was change wording to put a different spin on things. So with her, it focused way more on the gender of stuff than the deconstruction of Odysseus himself.
Being female doesn't in itself guarantee that you'll have a distinctively female or feminine perspective in any noticeable way. Women can be misogynistic perfectly easily, but many women aren't feminists. Many women haven't thought about gender.
You should check out, because I reacted to her video, the second story. Check out the second story. The YouTuber who's a doctor herself, or at least definitely like a writer. She had like a critique on how females are written in movies and books, and it's so like, and then also a separate one about how men are being written, and men are being super feminized, and women are pretty much being masculinized, or aka the girl bossing, and it's so out of whack. You check out her video; it's very good. It's called The Second Story. Highly recommend, because she put like a fine point on it all. Because it's this feminized messaging has affected even like novels. It's gotten so doggone bad.
That whatsoever.
Like, there's still stuff in there where she's like, no, I think you should know that this guy is wrong. But that same glory that he would get from sacking cities to her would be something that he should be ashamed of in itself. Whereas that's not enough for Nolan. Nolan has to really hammer you in the face with the obvious message. Because, well, Emily Wilson's was aimed at sort of university students, and so she can rely on sort of a uniform cultural knowledge, that she knows those people will have her opinions on things. And so she can leave the events how they are without telling them how to think about it, because they will all have that same opinion. Nolan didn't have that. Nolan's movie was going out to the world, a whole broad range of people with different opinions. And that means there's a danger if you present an action without telling the audience how to feel about it, because they might misinterpret that action from how you intend and think it's good.
There's a tolerance for ambiguity in the world of the Odyssey, which I don't think there exactly is in the world of Hollywood blockbuster action film.
This has actually happened at the end of the movie, where a lot of people have missed all this commentary about, we need to find a way to kill them without breaking Zeus's law, that actually he made them attack him first. Instead, they just go and see it as the same base message from the poet himself. They think he just went in there and wiped them out. A lot of people took the wrong message from that scene, which is why I felt the...
And they also removed, like, many of the gods from... Like, I knew this was going to happen because Christopher Nolan don't like anything magical or mystical in his films. He likes everything super grounded. So I thought that was probably the worst part, the only bad part in hiring him to do the Odyssey. But initially I thought, okay, that part is gonna suck, but everything else is gonna probably be so good. But no, that was only a tip of the iceberg. But removing the Greek gods from the story of the Odyssey, big mistake, because a lot of them have influenced a lot of people, especially Odysseus, in this film. He's pushed and pulled in a lot of ways by different demigods and gods. So removing that, you're moving a lot of agency from some characters, and in some cases, like, it's kind of nonsensical. Like, taking away Hermes when he's such an integral part of giving him this plant to eat so he can avoid being turned into an animal, that is a big part. You took away the part where that demigoddess took advantage, not only turned his men into animals, but took advantage of Odysseus for 5 years, but can't have anything wrong done, like anything that the woman done wrong, can't have that. So you remove that entirely, and it's like, that was a major point, a major thing that really, like you sitting there, like, him and his men are thinking that they spend like at least a few days just to relax a little bit, among women and having some nourishment while being so far out long at sea, but only realizing they've been there for years, wasting more time than he thought necessary. While this woman is taking advantage of him and his naivete, and it's like, oh wow, jeez, can't have that in the story. Like, oh my god, I cannot tell you how much I love the story, and the fact that they bastardized it is I'm feeling the same way I felt with, like, Tom Cruise's Mummy movie, because that's not a fucking mummy. It's just like another Tom Cruise, like, sloppy. If it's just like a Tom Cruise sloppy action and called it something else, then it'll be completely different. But the fact that you call it the Mummy insults, like, what I love about that classic horror tale, and bastardizing by extension the Brendan Fraser versions. It's like, what are you doing?
Rest of the movie, he deliberately deconstructs Odysseus. He makes sure that you cannot misinterpret what he's telling you about this useless twat. I think it's this explicit nature why this movie has been boosted beyond all reality and far beyond any praise it could possibly have deserved. Like, all the things about, like, calling this a masterpiece is a 10 out of 10.
That's what I'm saying. They overglazed it. Okay, and I'm saying, because people that I follow that did trust their opinions because they're very nuanced, they ain't overglazing or underglazing things, they tell you how it is, and they leave the audience up to decide whether or not they want to check it out. Not saying like, oh, calling you or ist or a foe for wanting to see it or not see it, or just basically calling you buzzword names. No, it's like, hey, it's your dollars, vote for your dollars. If you want to see it, please check it out for yourself to come up with your own decisions. But by and large, this is how I feel, this is how it is. Giving like a fair critique. And they're saying it's okay. In terms of it being like a movie, it's okay, above average. But in terms of being like an Odyssey adaptation, it is terrible. And there are certain certain actors that did a great job, as opposed to most of the other actors that have not been doing a good job. So, fair critique. Fair critique. So yeah, I just determined like, hey, it's probably, you know, maybe like the 7 out of 10 type of film is above average. Okay, fine, fair. He succeeded. Didn't really have a doubt that he will still somehow succeed. But the overpraising is just like, okay, y'all just nudging the needle a little bit too far just to satisfy your narrative. Like, please.
So many obvious problems with this movie that it doesn't really matter which side of the fence you sit on. You should be able to look at this and go, it's definitely not a 10. It's not a masterpiece. Unless you're getting wrapped up by the fact that, oh, this was filmed on film. That you sat in a 70mm IMAX screen and simply got blown away by the experience of it all. That it became an event for you, rather than the actual content of the movie itself. It's why I will be very interested to see if people's opinions hold about this movie as it goes onto streaming, as they start watching it at home, on smaller screens, on their own, without getting carried away with just a huge crowd and a massive screen. But this hype is bizarre. Because, well, the movie is...
That's what I said earlier in my video, like earlier in the video. Give it some time. I bet you they'll have a difference. This overglazing will start to wane, and the people who been overpraising it, the shilling it the hell out of it, will, like, you know, once the heat dies down, they'll be a little bit more honest and be like, yeah, you know, it was all right. I still like it, but I haven't, you know, checked it out since I saw it in the theater. I thought it was a masterpiece. I thought it would be on the same level as something like The Dark Knight, where you can just watch it over and over again because it's so good. No. You was pushing a narrative. You didn't want to look like, you know, a chud in front of your little woke friends, so you just overpraised the hell of it because that was like a thing to do to service a particular purpose. You wasn't honest. But now that, you know, the heat is, you know, died down, you know, you can say what you really think without much pushback. And like, oh, I always thought it was just okay. No, you didn't. You overpraised the hell of it because that was like, you know, a thing to do at that time. Stop it. You know that's going to happen because it happened plenty of times in some other movies in the past.
The box office, it's not doing anything like astronomical that we haven't seen before. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness came out and did 255 million, and that had some absolutely bizarre messages in it as well. Let's not forget that Wanda held an entire city of innocent people captive, and then Doctor Strange went, oh, don't worry, you're a woman, and so I knew everything would be fine. We're just going to let you off. It's essentially the same attitude that Christopher Nolan had with the Lovers of the Suitors, or as they're called in the translations, the Hawk. That's why I think it's interesting that we didn't get this narrative for Doctor Strange. There wasn't any multiverse of madness proved go woke, go broke is a myth. Didn't even try and spin that. Which means at the moment, either Hollywood is desperate, the tide is turning, things are rolling back, and so they're trying to galvanize around this. It's like, no, you don't have to change to make money. Trust us, we've got an example for once. And there are plenty of articles that back up that could be necessary in Hollywood, such as Issa Rae laments that she might actually have to compete with people on a level playing field, or that bigotry is disappearing in Hollywood. Was it ever really here? The DEI is DOA, Hollywood's lack of progress towards inclusion. I can understand when you're just taking loss after loss, that a movie may become a sort of a rallying point, your last stand. So then it gets people like Charlotte Higgins to go, Nolan has made the Odyssey for our times by sacrificing the delicious darkness of Homer's epic. And to be fair, Charlotte Higgins looks like someone that would enjoy the Odyssey. This is backed up even more if you start looking at her other articles and find out, even as far back as 2016, she was writing articles such as, is opera the most misogynistic art form? So I really hope it isn't, because if it is, we're going to have to try a lot harder. It's what I mean when I say that a lot of this commentary, which never used to appear, almost seems like they're trying to convince themselves that, oh, the Odyssey made money and somehow that means people lost somehow. In 10 years, one movie made money, and that means we can forget all of our collective knowledge for the last decade. This is one of the problems with getting your opinion from social consensus. It means that you have to always believe you're on the side of the horde.
At Marriott Bonvoy.
Ugh, God. The last thing I want to see is this live-action Moana commercial. Golly.
Homeowners insurance.
And I want very much to live on the right side of history.
Yeah, that's what these feminists want to turn men into. Beta Pascals. That's what they want to turn us into. And when sensible men push back against that, oh, you're part of the problem.
really wish that we could get it to you guys, but we need to stand on the right side of history.
Because all you believe is that whatever the dominant social belief is in your system. And so if somehow you're wrong, if it turns out that actually you're just a tiny minority and everyone else is on the other side, that's actually incredibly mentally stressful for you, because you've put all this energy into it and you've been trying to get all this social status points, and it turns out it's negative. This is why they talk about being on the right side of history all the time. They mean with the horde, with the masses. Wherever the most people are, that's where they want to be. That's why to them this is like, haha, see, this proves that actually everyone is on my side. It's less about you, and far more just ego stroking themselves to reassure themselves, as I imagine it's been a rather anxious time for them, especially after things like Supergirl. Because they can't abstract, virtualize other people's opinions, they don't realize it doesn't work the other way around. Don't get insecure because the Odyssey made some money. My opinions aren't based in a movie. They're removed from it. I believe they're just foundational truths about reality. I don't need people to agree because reality doesn't require your agreement. Reality doesn't even require their knowledge in order for it to still be true. Whereas they're basing their opinions off the opinions of other people. My only aim is to be correct. It is to accurately describe reality and the causes of things, rather than related to people's preferences or opinions or trying to get some kind of collective agreement. Also, the other dimension of this doesn't work. It's also meant to shame the other people. That somehow it can defeat them because, don't you know, people disagree with you. You may be in the small minority and that's meant to shame you into being silent. A lot of people just project onto other people what they value and how they judge the world, which is why they end up at such poor conclusions. We saw this with Paul Tassi recently, where talk about the Odyssey box office. I'm not sure the right-wing culture war guys have ever taken a loss this big before. I mean, a loss. It made money. Why is that a loss? Avatar makes more money. Avatar has all the same things as these movies. It's actually funny because they could have just done, the movie led by the straight white male action hero.
And probably referring to like the loss of the narrative or something like that. They, like he said, they don't want to think that they've been pushing this agenda for nothing. Otherwise, their heads will freaking explode because they need it to work. They need to justify any of this. Otherwise, they just look like complete idiots. And people, more often than not, don't want to look like idiots. They do not want to take L's, especially in view of the public. And more often than not, they don't want to admit they're wrong. That this is nonsensical because they don't want to look like the bad guy. They don't want to look racist or misogynist. You know, they're not. They're voicing, not only voicing opinion, but they point out, statistical fact most cases.
Was awesome position instead of all this nonsense, but the fighting is the point, I suppose. No, being honest is the point. Looking at the movie and judging it accurately, regardless of all of your fluff, is the point. So when you're like, well, it could have done is just said it was a great movie. It's like, but it isn't. It's like they could have just been on the right side of history. All they had to do is lie about the movie. If they just lied, they wouldn't have taken a loss. They could have been on the side of the horde, because to them that is the point, to be on the greater side of agreement. And they will do that by lying, misrepresenting their own opinion. Elliot Page is a man. To them, it doesn't matter what reality is, because doing that is dangerous. It means sticking your head above the parapet. It means being the only person in the room willing to say no when everybody else says yes. They'd rather just lie and say yes with everyone else, even when they know it's incorrect, and they expect you to do the same. That's why they have no problem with making movies about men being weak, because they are. Now, by this point, I'm sure someone's already commented, but you comment when the movies lose money? Like, yes, because I find it funny. Spending $175 million on a movie, plus marketing, and only making 125 is funny. It's funny because you made this movie the very embodiment of everything you believe, and it died. But if it succeeds, that doesn't bother me, because if something is just a truth in reality, it will be proven true in the long term. A truth doesn't require everything to agree with it, it's just a directional trend. Women are shorter than men doesn't mean there isn't the odd one that isn't. And it is only either stupid people or the disingenuous bad faith that ever bring up exceptions when you're describing things. And quite frankly, either one of those groups can be safely ignored. This is why the more interesting articles, far more than just being, it was a masterpiece, were the mainstream articles, which are bringing people back down to earth. Like, yes, I know, we all said it was a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, but after the near ecstatic reviews from critics and Nolan's record-breaking juggernaut, there is a small but vocal faction of the audience that appears to be begging to differ. There's a stubborn wave of 1.5-star reviews calling it super boring, long-winded, and poorly written, despite all of our propaganda. There's just these stubborn people, these disagreeable people that just refuse to go along with the horde. One of Nolan's biggest disappointments, drawing unfavorable comparisons with Troy and SpongeBob SquarePants. And this is where they start to bring people down to earth. Well, nominations for Best Picture and Director, Sound, VFX, Costume are perhaps inevitable. Nolan's never really been consistent with his acting awards. You know, given Nolan's track record, you can't be certain that the Odyssey is going to actually start winning things. You know, he's not a traditional action hero. If anything, it's his over...
Odysseus should have been in the same ilk as, or he is in the same ilk as Leonidas and Maximus. Stoic, heroic characters. Men that do what is necessary for their country, his people, and their family. That's what Odysseus should have been depicted as, and who's always been depicted as, but no, we got this feminized, trauma dumping version.
stated literacy of the piece that seems to be the...
You know what we was going to get when you saw those little promotional pictures with the, actors, doing, I guess, poses like Greek statues, but they just look all gay.
Problem. In fact, its pivotal scene is anything but entertaining. This and the continued mention of Zeus's law may be closer to liberal Hollywood's heart than the American public's. Speaking of Hollywood, the Academy loves a transformation, but Damon arguably doesn't deliver. This works against Odysseus' curiously flat witchy encounters. Doesn't really summon up the requisite level of threat. At this stage, hunches are just hunches. We can't live by omens and sacrifices. He might as well be talking about the award season. Does that sound like a 10 out of 10 masterpiece to you? Or is that people are like, yeah, we did get carried away at the moment, but now we think about it more. Now we have to be more realistic about the thing. We should probably start laying the groundwork to set expectations properly. And Deadline weren't the only ones that did this.
Booking.com. Booking.yeah.
Do not listen to that.
Thank you, man.
Variety came out with a piece talking about Christopher Nolan's elevated fanboy cult. Oddly sounds complimentary, does it? They say that The Odyssey being a home run was predictable, and that with rare exceptions, an army of critics have been raving, shoring up the artistic credibility of Nolan's 3-hour epic. But they also agree with what I've said, that the audience, our anticipation and excitement, the afterglow of the response, is woven into the event. In that sense, every Nolan film is a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not a masterpiece necessarily, but just creating the big swing aura of a masterpiece is enough to make people perceive it as one. Whether or not any given Nolan film works is almost irrelevant. The film automatically qualifies as his new ultimate trip. People get so carried away, they're just watching it, just enjoying the atmosphere, rather than the actual content of the movie. Often, which with the time skips and everything, is seemingly so complicated, they're like, oh, I think I need to go and watch it again to understand it. It's like, no, it's just actually not that deep. In fact, it's when you do understand things, it actually becomes the problem, as when you notice how shallow it is. Nolan has become a one-man movie cult. It's all down into how Nolan taps into elevated fanboy culture, fanboy enthusiasm. It's the quintessence of movie escapism. Escapism purified and heightened into a cinematic crack. That's why fanboy addiction to awesomeness is, in many ways, the enemy of movie art. For if all you're seeking from movies is awesomeness, you might be numb to anything more quietly dramatic, subtle, or spiritual, which is something that Nolan cut out of his movies, specifically removing gods and spirituality from the godly text. The paradox of elevated fanboy culture that surrounds Nolan is that as members of his cult regard themselves as connoisseurs of artistic things. They're not zombies, they're onto a higher tier. And yet, in more ways than not, they're just seeking a version of a fanboy rush, and Nolan, feeding their appetite, has become the thinking person's fanboy demigod. It's a load of people that consider themselves connoisseurs when actually they're just eating fast food. This is why the Odyssey is sprawling and backbreaking. But is The Odyssey actually a good movie? It has its moments, but I found it to be patching and diffuse, too remote to hook me. To me, the movie felt thrown together. Yet several friends have told me they dig the film just because it's different, because it's committed. In other words, it's Nolan's one-of-a-kind mythological head trip that dares to be audaciously forbidding. The people love it's pretentious because they don't understand it. And in fact, not understanding it is part of the reason they like it, because if they actually understood it, they wouldn't like the messages. I think if this movie wasn't made by Nolan, it was made by Disney, it would get slated, because then they would have actually looked at the messages of the movie and realized what they were. Whereas with Nolan, it's like, well, at the end, he didn't kill all those suitors. It's like, yeah, but how? They told you why, but if you skip one line in the text, well, now you're just watching an action.
That's why they banked on somebody as big as Nolan to make this work. Just to justify these stupid decisions, because if it was any other director, especially if it aren't as big as Nolan, people will see through the bull crap. It's only as good as it is because Nolan shot it in a particular way, because he always shoots great scenes on location, none of that green screen bullcrap. Gotta give him that. He very little to no CGI in his films. A lot of his stuff is very practical because it's shot in also in IMAX. It's always gonna look good. That's something you cannot take away. And he always ends up picking, generally speaking, great actors, which more often than not give great performances, just depending on the situation. But if it was any other director, a lot of people will saw through the BS.
Scene. Will the audience come with Nolan this time? Mine says yes and no. Nolan bros are doing backflips. Yet I wonder how many viewers will experience the film the way I did. A semi-interesting, high and mighty slog. I'm sorry, but The Odyssey is no Oppenheimer, no Gladiator. Nolan doesn't need my advice, but if I were offering it, first thing I'd say is it might be time to stay away from historical epics. Now that he's ascended to Mount Olympus of cinema, you might start considering the idea that less could be more. The Odyssey makes me wish Christopher Nolan would come off the peak of his own legend. He might even seem more of a wizard if he stopped trying to use movies to transcend what movies are. But then that would mean that people had to judge the movies for what they are, rather than feeling as if they've experienced something something they can't understand. It's beyond them, when actually it's just nonsensical. What got me about both of these articles is this variety and deadline. You don't get more mainstream than that. You don't get more corporate media, access media than that. And yet they were the first ones to go against the masterpiece theory. To be like, okay, we had our laughs, we took the piss out of those people over there, but the longer I think about this movie, the more I'm like, we should probably bring this down back to a level we can defend, right? It's not the greatest movie ever made, right? Because you have to think about the argument that was being made by those critics. The Odyssey defeats the trolls. Oh, you picked the wrong fight here. This disproves go woke, go broke. It's like, you realize what you're doing. As I said,
and once it gets brought up years later, they will like conveniently forget and not choose to acknowledge or come back, do their research of this years later to show like, oh hey, y'all kind of overpraised this thing. I was like, no, we didn't. Or I was like, maybe you should do. They'll say like, maybe you should do your research, because we always said, because they'll write something conveniently, you know, a little bit after this. So if people, and then try to wipe away this part, these part of the articles, and try to somehow erase this or bury it somehow. So when they put in the standard and fair criticism, the, you know, crap, what's the word? It just escaped me right now. Just the not overglazed version of this critique of this film, and then years later when people challenge them, it's like, you remember when you kind of overglaze, because people have like Mandela effect sometimes, because they'll remember these things vaguely, but they cannot remember, oh, it was Vanity Fair in July of 2026. They ain't gonna remember that, but they'll know vaguely of it. But then, you know, people who've been overly praising this will say, well, you probably do your research, because actually here's the article, and they'll show the one that they gave a fair criticism and bury this and make it seem like people was like misremembering. Do not forget, this is what they put. This is what the thing is. I'm gonna leave it right here so you can freeze frame it. Remember, you probably won't remember it. It's gonna be a year or two later. It's gonna be a different thing situation in the future. But just try to understand, you did not imagine this. You did not misremember this. This was a thing. They overglazed it, overpraised it, and they'll try to try to rewrite some other article with a more even-keeled critique and make it seem like this is always the critique they had, which is just not. Because they had an agenda when they putting this stuff out to get more people to like think it's like the best thing, the best masterpiece, and all this other stuff, when it's clearly you went too far with that.
It's like, you realize what you're doing. As I said earlier, one data point is irrelevant to a trend. Only an idiot or someone in bad faith ever points it out. And yet here we are. And if you want some unsolicited advice, when you get a woke movie that makes money, you may want to not do the victory lap quite so much and go, look, see it, prove it works. Because if you want to say that the ideology is why the movie made money, it means that when the movies fail, that's why they failed. And so as we all know that this is an exception, and you're just going to have a huge string of movies after this which are going to flop, basically just set yourself up for a crushing defeat, all because you felt the need to brag. You are very smart. I'm going to say, it's odd to see Deadline and Variety be the voice of reason among all the insane lunatics. Let's not bet the house on this one, folks. Let's rein it in. It's not 10 out of 10. It's not a masterpiece. There's no victory of a war here. We had our fun, now let's be reasonable. It's going to be interesting to see whether that works. How many people will listen? But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video.
Oh, got it. It's nearly an hour and a half of me talking about this. There was a lot I wanted to say, and I wanted to hear Disparu's thoughts. But yeah, they're going to learn the wrong lessons, and we'll get a slew of movies and TV shows in the next year or two. Somebody's in that woke little bubbles typing up a little screenplay trying to repeat the success of Nolan, and it's like, oh, I can gender swap everything as imaginable, throw in a trans person, as many as possible, like put it in a setting of Native American culture. Like, we're talking about a story about the Comanches, and just throw in some Asian people and call them Native Americans of this other tribe, because like we can just make up any excuse as putting like a trans person as a tribal leader, and look how progressive they are of that era, and it's like they're gonna into pushing this narrative because they think it's going to be super successful. They're going to put it in like Oscar bait weekend or month or whatever, and like trying to repeat what they saw from Nolan and thinking like, oh, because he made it okay, now everybody's going to just automatically love it and not call them out on it. That is going to be a thing, and Nolan is the primary contributor to this. All because he couldn't just stick to the original source material of what people expect from the Odyssey, the Iliad. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you guys think, and I will catch you all on the next one.